Let's put our hands together and give a very warm welcome to Shelley Osborne.
Hello, everyone. How are you, people innovators? Okay, I'm going to need a bit more than that. How are you? But I am really excited to be here with you all today and talk a little bit about a program we did at Udemy. And I'm going to talk about puzzles, actually, and how it connects to our imagination and really change agility. Let me start with a story. Who here in the audience remembers their very first camera? Show of hands. Okay, that's a lot of you. That's impressive. And I bet a lot of you had a Kodak for your very first camera. I'm willing to bet on that. And that's because in 1888, Kodak kicked off their mission to democratize photography. It was started by a guy by the name of George Eastman in Rochester, New York. And they were so excited about this mission. They wanted to give everybody the chance to take photos. And I think that's a pretty cool mission, and it resonates with a lot of the things our companies are doing today. But because of that mission and because of that early start, they were the ubiquitous camera brand. You had Kodak everywhere. Most people owned a Kodak camera at this point. They started off with film as well, and they were the leader in the space. They also had one of the most clever marketing campaigns out there. You all probably have heard of that Kodak moment, yeah? Well, that sort of phrase was meant to capture a time or a moment in your life that was worth capturing. And back in the day, we didn't have the ability to take 19 selfies when we thought we were looking really good, when we were feeling ourselves, right? You had maybe a couple of photos you could take. So that Kodak moment had to be really precise. You had to be really sure that it was worth taking that moment. And they did really well. But they also really started to think about that moment as something that needed to evolve. And then in 1975, they developed, interestingly, the first digital camera. That was only in 1975, can you believe that? Now, it was not an elegant technology. It was as big as a toaster, look at that. And it took about 20 minutes for your photo to develop. And on top of that, it was super grainy and super blurry, and you could basically not tell what you'd taken a photo of anyway. Now, that moment, that Kodak moment, ended up being a missed Kodak moment because they started to think about this possibility of developing this technology further, and they thought, well, I don't know, we're leading in this space with cameras, and we're doing really, really well with the film, so why don't we just stick to that? Let's just keep moving with what we've got going. And it was a lack of imagination and a missed Kodak moment. Pretty quickly, their competitors went ahead and went after that space. They started to develop their own digital cameras. And we saw Kodak really take a total tailspin. The stock plummeted. They suddenly were not the leader. They were not that ubiquitous brand. They were falling very, very far behind. And this really represented what we can call a new Kodak moment, where there was this complacency, this certainty that what we've done is always going to be enough. There was that lack of imagination, and I think more interestingly, an unwillingness to change, to try something new or to see yourself as something new, to imagine that. Now, I think that as we consider ourselves today, change agility is table stakes for the modern world. The ability to thrive in change and to shift with change. I'm looking at a room full of incredible HR and L&D leaders, and we know that the ground is constantly shifting under our feet. And that's not just because in the Bay Area there's been some earthquakes this week, which there have. It's because every single day, something new is being thrown at us, right? We've got geopolitical changes happening. We've got economic shifts. People are constantly talking about a recession. We've got things happening internally in our organizations. Oh, are we doing a reorg? Is there a new product line? So to be able to survive, we need this skill. It's absolutely essential for us to do this. And to do that, I believe that imagination is the core competency. It's the one thing you need, and it's what Kodak lacked. Now, we thought a lot about this at Udemy. We're not immune to all the change you're feeling too. It's something we're constantly aware of, and we wanted to support our company, our employees in this. And traditionally, when we think about change, we usually hear the words change management, right? Right? Change management. And you can imagine it. This is a room, probably a boardroom, full of people deciding how we're going to manage it and how we're going to tell people about the change. And it's so top down. And it just feels really inauthentic and not fair for the employees that we work with. So when we started thinking about helping our Udemy employees thrive and change, we wanted to flip that script. We wanted it to be about the employee. We wanted to help them have that imagination and that change agility competency. So we decided to create change agents. We wanted to turn all of the Udemy employees into change agents and give them that agency over what's happening in their day-to-day lives. Now, that's not easy, though. Not everybody loves change. I'm willing to bet the people in the audience today, some of you might like it, some of you might dread it, some of you might be pretty mixed about it. And to illustrate that point, I want to do a little bit of an activity. Now, if I could get everyone in the audience, and I mean everyone, to cross your arms. Okay? Now, some of you did this in the improv workshop yesterday, but let's try it the other way. Flip your arms and cross them the other way. How's that feel? The laughter tells me not good, right? For some of you, was that super awkward? Yes. Did some people forget how to cross their arms? Yeah, I figured as much. And that's the thing. I asked you to change the littlest thing. Just cross your arms the other way. And it caused that reaction, that discomfort, that moment of, what am I doing? Where am I? How am I supposed to do this? Where do my arms go? Are these my arms? All these feelings that just emerged suddenly. And it was such a tiny change. So as we were thinking about our employees, we wanted that empathy. We wanted to recognize that if that's how we feel with a really simple change, what happens when there's an org shift? What happens when we have a new leader? What happens when there's some big changes completely outside the company's control? And how can we support that? Now, as we were building this program, we also wanted to lean into the neuroscience. And this is one of those confession moments. Hey, guess what? I'm not a neuroscientist. Just so you're all aware, I'm not a dancer, and I'm not a neuroscientist. But we really wanted to do the research here and understand it. So I have to give a shout out to Jess Alderman from my team who helped build this program. We really dug into the neuroscience of change to understand why that moment you all just had with the flipping of the arms, why that even happens. What's underneath that? And the core of it is, well, it's evolutionary. It's all tied to this threat and reward response that we've been carrying with us for centuries. And when change happens, we're actually experiencing that feeling of threat. That's what's happening there. We think we're in a hostile environment. So a lot of what happens is completely under and outside of our control. We have our body reacting in a completely new way, hormones released that increase stress. They actually increase your heart rate. You suddenly have a lack of ability to respond logically, and suddenly you're only responding emotionally. And all of this, like I said, is happening without your consent. It just happens to you. So we really wanted to tie all of these neuroscience lessons into our Change Agent program. And we also knew we wanted to do this in an innovative way. I really like to do clever things with our programs, and we were thinking about what could happen here. So we decided to let our imaginations run for a little bit. When Jess and I were building this, we kind of gave ourselves some time to ponder and think about it. And I came up with an idea that I thought might actually really work here. Now, every holiday season, my husband and I have a tradition. I buy him a board game. And it's a great tradition because it gives us an opportunity to share and connect and just play a game together rather than getting caught up in all, the chaos of the holidays. This last holiday season, I bought him a really cool game. I bought him a game that actually mirrors an escape room. Has anybody been to an escape room before? Yeah, tons of you. Okay, for those who haven't, escape rooms are these spaces you can go to, and they trap you in a room, right? And then they give you a bunch of puzzles, and they basically say you can't get out of the room until you solve all the puzzles. I believe you could probably get out of the room. I think they'd let you out if you were having like a panic attack or something. But the idea is that you have to solve the puzzles to get out. Now, this board game took that same premise, but you get to play it in your house. It was super, super fun, and I realized that a lot of the same things that happen in change happen in an escape room. Now, if you've been to a summit before, you've probably heard me say this. It still has to be pedagogy over novelty. I've talked in the past about using virtual reality and augmented reality, and those things are all fun. But it can't just be for the novelty. It can't just be because escape rooms are really, really cool. It has to make sense. And for us, it had to tie back to the neuroscience. So why does an escape room help us? Why is it uniquely positioned to do so? Well, escape rooms, they're collaborative by nature. You go with a group of people. I mean, I suppose you could go by yourself, but how much fun is that, right? And really, in change, we're better served when we try and solve it with others. They're random and unpredictable. If you've been to an escape room, you know this. They just throw random stuff at you. Sometimes there's even people hiding in the rooms that jump out of nowhere. It's terrifying. I'm not a fan of that part. But that unpredictability is really connected to change. And there's often unclear solutions. You don't really know what you're supposed to do. And you don't know if you have the right answer, or is there only one right answer, or are there multiple ways to do this? It's all possible. And then probably more than anything, that perseverance, grit, and of course imagination is absolutely essential in an escape room and in change. So we realized this was the perfect way to bring the lessons we wanted to bring to life out. We wanted to really try this. Now we decided to connect all that neuroscience to this escape room, and we built a framework to create change agents. And this framework really ties to our learning objectives. We knew we needed to help people be ready for absolutely anything, because you never know what's coming. We wanted to help them think outside the box, use resources wisely, to tolerate ambiguity, hard one, I know, and to lead and communicate. Now, I want to walk you through how we use this framework to really create an escape room that taught these lessons and started to develop the competency for change agility with our Udemy employees. Up first is be ready for anything. The truth of the matter is the brain is a prediction machine. It loves routine and pattern and same. It absolutely wants that in life. So when we're really experiencing change, a part of our reaction and a part of the reason it feels like threat and hostile is because it's breaking that pattern for us. It's no longer what we were expecting. So what we decided to do with our escape room game is really lean into the meta goal of disorientation. Now, this slide depicts actually the title slide we showed in the workshop. And what is really interesting about this is we kind of faked people out. This slide was the opener, and we walked in and acted like it was mostly a regular instructor-led experience. The room was set up just like you'd imagine. We had pods of people, there was sticky notes and pens. We opened the workshop by talking about change, just like you'd normally expect. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we threw them for a loop. We just sort of basically yelled, "Change agent," and threw a puzzle at them. What's cool about this is they didn't really know that it was coming. Now, you might be wondering already, Shelley, I hope you're going to tell me what the puzzles are. The truth is, it doesn't actually matter what we got them to solve. Our major goal was to have the experience of solving the puzzles mimic the experience of change. So we were really trying to disorient them. That was the main point. The puzzle can be whatever the puzzle is. In this particular instance, we hid all the lessons. We hid everything in a classic-looking participant guide. So people didn't even really know that there was a puzzle hidden in it. They thought it was just a normal workshop with a normal participant guide. It was really interesting to see them struggle a little bit. And let me tell you, they were really frustrated too, because we gave them about 10% of the information they needed and expected them to figure it out for themselves. I'm not going to say that it was hilarious, but it was really funny. Our next one was thinking outside the box. Another interesting fact about our brains is that they're only 2% of our body weight, but they use 20% of our energy. So we're constantly trying to be more efficient with it too. And our brain tends to take the path of least resistance. It's trying really, really hard to just do what it's always known. And in change, we often have to come up with new solutions or new ideas. We can't have that Kodak moment of just doing the same thing we've always done. Now, for this one, we'd already shown them one puzzle, and that puzzle had things embedded in the participant guide, and they had to look right in front of them. What's interesting is how quickly people thought they'd figured it out. They were so sure, based on that one first puzzle, that they knew what to do next. But we really messed with them. This one, suddenly they had to count things in the room. This is a picture of our training room, and you can see some people are down on the floor counting the stripes, and then there's a group at the very back corner. You see that one on the right? They haven't figured it out yet. And then there's some people looking under chairs. They don't have the right answer yet either. It was the stripes on the floor they were supposed to count. And we were really trying to throw them because they thought for the first little bit that it was the same as the last clue. Oh, it must be hidden in the participant guide. Again, our goal here is to have the change really be thrown at them versus the puzzle be the point. It's about the experience in replicating what change felt like. And the magic, of course, for all of these lessons is in the debrief. After every puzzle, we'd have a conversation with folks about, how did you solve this? How did you figure this out? What was like change here? And then asking them to tell us about the tools and techniques. And each time, we also would share a framework or a tip. So for thinking outside the box, we shared with them ways to brainstorm 5 ideas instead of just stopping at 1. Up next, we were talking about how to use our resources wisely. Now, this one was also really interesting too because we were trying to throw them for a loop. Again, we were layering the lessons together, showing them that they couldn't just expect and predict everything as the same. Now, this is interesting because we also, in those moments of stress, we really shut down our level and ability to look at things objectively. We just tend to think about things in a very irrational way when we're really stressed out. So we wanted to give them some tools to push through that. Now this time, we were actually asking them to use the workshop a little bit differently. The participant guide had to be folded. It had to have pieces cut out of it. And what was most interesting maybe was when we needed people to flip the page upside down. And oh my goodness, it took forever for people to figure that out. We're so stuck in our heads thinking the page has to be right side up that for them to think about it being upside down was just impossible. It was unfathomable. Now this is a group of our employees in Turkey. We played it there too. And they were actually the fastest group to figure it out. So I have to give them some props. Up next, we really focused on how to tolerate ambiguity because change, in its nature, is very ambiguous. But in those moments of ambiguity, we often have to make decisions. And we often have to make those decisions without all the information, without all the answers. We have to decide. And people get stuck in decision paralysis. We wanted to help our Udemy employees really push past that. So what we did here, again, you might call it a little mean, and they were a little frustrated, but we gave them too many clues, or not enough clues. We were really vague in our explanation of how to solve this one. And when they asked for help, we kind of said, oh, I don't know. Maybe. We really wanted to force them just to decide and let them know that it didn't really matter what exactly they decided, but that they had to decide. This one was interesting too, because some people in particular really needed there to be one way to do this. They were absolutely certain there had to be one right answer, but there wasn't. And we made this one particular puzzle a little hard. You can see this is actually a maze. We gave them a bit of a word map. And the first time we did this, we actually had some of the mazes with 6 rows instead of 5. And oh my goodness, that was really hard for people to figure out. They're like, it doesn't match. And we're like, oh, that's weird. And they were like, but this isn't right. And we're like, yeah, that's strange. I wonder what's going on there. And they were so frustrated. And I know, it sounds like a bit of a cruel experiment, but the debrief is where we really pulled it together and talked about those feelings and how we react then. And what can you do the next time you're not sure if it's the right time to decide? We gave them a technique and a framework for how to make decisions based on a day one hypothesis and push through. Next up, continuing to layer our lessons, we focused on how to lead and how to communicate. Now, communication is at the core of all change, and a lot of the times the breakdown in change, right? So particularly for this one, we wanted to bring the whole group together. Every time we did this workshop, we had about 20, 25 people there, and they'd been working in small groups so far. We wanted the whole room to have to collaborate and communicate and come together. Now for this one, what we did is we actually printed some random pictures off the internet. Our entire experience had been a role play around change, and they were secret agents, having to find a covert agent named Billy Idol in New York City. I know, we got really clever. So all the pictures we printed were New York City scenes, and we implied that there was an order to them. Leaning again on that tolerating ambiguity, we implied that there was one right answer and that the pictures told a story. The truth is, we really did just print 20 random pictures off the internet. I know, it's pretty funny. So we gave them to them and said, you've got to figure out what order these go in. Please, let us know when you've got it figured out. And they had to figure out first that they had to work together and they had to combine all the pictures into one story. But then they had to figure out when they'd finally found that right answer and communicate with each other to decide what the right answer was, and then let us know. It was fascinating watching the groups work through this. It was always amazing when I'd hear someone say, maybe there isn't only one way to do this. Or when someone would say, I think we just have to decide, I think we have to push through, I think we have to just let this go. And eventually this would always happen. Sometimes it took a few minutes, sometimes it took a little longer. Always an experiment for us. But the lesson here was, how do you communicate and change? How do you push through and decide? Layering also, how do we use our resources wisely together, bringing all the pictures, thinking outside the box of what could the story be? And then, of course, being ready for anything because, well, again, this puzzle was entirely different than anything they'd seen. So we just kept playing with the neuroscience here. Now, these are the pictures. As you can see, beautiful photographs of New York, but I have no idea what order they should be in. Maybe Jess on my team had an idea. I don't think so. I think she just found the best photo she could, and we went with it. I'd love to show you in a video now what this kind of looked like in real life. So I have a short clip to show you a bit of a mixture of people working in the instructor-led version of our workshop and also our online version. Hello, agents. Are you ready to start your mission to become a change agent? Here is your mission, if you choose to accept it. This course uses escape room-inspired puzzles throughout that will mirror the lessons you're learning about change. You are now all certified change agents. Great job. I hope you found a few ways to think differently, solve problems that arise, and move forward confidently through change. So that's kind of what it looked like, and we've run this for about 150 of the employees at Udemy. So you're probably wondering, what did we achieve with this? Well, I have some early results I can share with you. We have a 90 Net Promoter Score on this, and that I am so very, very proud of. If you're not familiar with Net Promoter Score, it's a way to really know if people are promoters of what you're up to or not, and anything above 0 is good, anything above 30 is very good, anything above 50 is excellent, and I'm going to guess 90 is world class, so we're pretty pleased. We're really, really excited about that. We also did some classic smile sheet kind of stuff and looked at our average course score. We've got 4.8 out of 5. And then we also heard from our employees that they had increased confidence in their ability to respond to change. And this was just in our pilots and testing and understanding what was happening. But I also want to share some of the quotes because there were some really clever comments on our workshop. This person, I know who this was too. They were really frustrated. You pushed me to the edge, but then you brought us back. You forced us to deal with change in the best way possible. And I know who this person was, and I remember the moment, this is in our Dublin office, the third time I threw something different at them, she just looked at me like she was like, what is happening? Stop it. She was so frustrated. But in the end, she talked about how powerful this was to replicate those feelings and learn some techniques to use and thrive in change. This one as well, clever, crafty, captivating, capricious, change agent, This course had it all, from practical frameworks to role plays as undercover agents. So we really leaned into that role playing, also the gamification, but we made sure that every single lesson had a really solid debrief, also frameworks and techniques. We didn't just want this to be a conversation that went nowhere. Each time we gave them a tool that they could use the next time they experienced that feeling in change. And this may be my favorite quote ever. This should be a required workshop for anyone alive. Right? I don't think I can beat this. I think I'm just done now. Like, no more quotes, no more surveys. Given the rate of change within our industry and company, however, these are super critical skills everyone needs to exercise in order to be happy and productive at Udemy. But this quote, I think, actually captures something bigger that we did. We were really focused on helping people survive and thrive in change at Udemy, and we heard from so many of our employees that these skills and techniques translated to their real lives, and that their feelings about change were also relevant in their personal lives and with their families. So we felt really, really good about this. But what are we going to do with it next? Well, we have a lot of plans. We're really excited about our early start with this workshop, and we're going to make this required for all employees at Udemy. We think that this is a basic competency we really want to develop for everybody, because there's no getting away from this change, right? We're all in it. We're all experiencing it. We need to support people better. We're also going to look at how this ties to our attrition data, as well as our engagement survey. So we want to look and see if this has any impact on improving both of those metrics. And then we're going to do some tracking on the pre, post, and ongoing confidence during change. So right now, we just started looking at the post change, and we regret not looking at it more holistically. So we're going to start doing that and really identify what's happening, and tie that to some predictive analytics. My team's really been diving into this space, trying to understand what we can do predictively, where we can really identify which interventions we're putting in place, what other interventions we can do to identify which teams might need more support with change agility, which teams have really great competency in change agility that we can learn from. So a ton of opportunity here. Now, with that said, I want to show you the framework again. And you might notice a small change on this slide. When I showed it to you the first time, I said it was a framework to create change agents. But we're all here today imagining a new future for learning. And how exciting is that? I think that every single person in this room represents a change agent. That's what we do. We're in talent development. And as we're thinking about imagining that new future for learning, this is our framework. It's just as much for each person here. As we're thinking about that imagination, it's about being ready for anything. Thinking outside the box, using our resources wisely, tolerating ambiguity, as hard as it is, and leading and communicating. Because we don't want to have our next Kodak moment. Thank you, everybody.